Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting for Wednesday, the 22nd of September 2021. I'd like to welcome councillors, our executive staff, representatives from the media and members of the community who are joining us in the gallery this morning. Welcome all. Call the meeting open at 9 a.m. And do we have any requests for leave of absence or any apologies? Okay, we'll move on then to the opening prayers, and we might just all join in saying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Amen. Oh, thank you, Councillor Duff. I did the shorter version, I did the Catholic version, but thank you nonetheless, and God bless everybody as we welcome you here today. Now I'd like to call on Councillor Duff to perform recognition of traditional owners.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders, both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, we have the agenda. Does anyone have any declarable or prescribed conflicts of interest in relation to today's agenda? Mr CEO.
Mr Mayor, if I may go first, at the community meeting there was which is 19.44 on the agenda today, there was 4 councillors that declared an interest and then stepped out, and the other councillors, the 3 that were remaining, that for today's process, we really should run through that again, but each would be done individually, not as a group. So the 3 vote on the first declaration, and then that person comes back, the 4 votes on the 5. It's painful, I'm sorry, and I do apologise. And the 5 vote on the 6 and the 6 vote on the 7, because one of those declarations, for the standing committee, because it held no delegation, it was fine. But because it's a decision point today, there may be one of those declarations that isn't like the others, and it may have a different aspect to it. And if you do them in a batch, well then that just can get a bit mucky. So I do apologise in advance for the nature of it, but I had spoken to Lynelle in advance about it. So that's the one that I'm aware of, and if we could deal with that in the first instance, clear it out the room, and then we can go for the others if that's amenable to yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr CEO. So in item 19.4 on the agenda is tender for cattle facilities, and councillors' declarations of declarable conflict of interest in relation to that. Can we have councillors come forward, please, if you do have that? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I declare that I could possibly have a conflict of interest in regards to these discussions around the people that have tendered for that. I have bought and sold cattle through some of the people that have tendered, so I'd just like to declare a conflict, or a perceived conflict.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jones. Other councillors? Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I am in the same situation as Councillor Jones. I have bought and sold cattle from some of the agents that are in the tender process.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Henschen?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Mr Mayor, similar situation to Councillor Jones and Councillor Duff. I have an involvement, so a perceived conflict of interest there as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I too have a declarable conflict of interest, as I have brought and sold cattle through one of the tenderers who is a cattle agent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now ask the 4 councillors who've disclosed a declarable conflict of interest, if you could please leave the room, and remaining councillors will attend at the matter, and we'll call you back one at a time. Yeah. So if all 4 could leave the room, we'll call you back one at a time as each matter is attended to.
Actually, that's probably a fair point. Councillor Jones is...
Could one go out at a time?
Yeah. Do 6.
Yep. General Manager, would you mind just bringing back all councillors bar Councillor Jones? Thank you. And we'll work them through in divisional order. Thank you. All councillors bar Councillor Jones. Thank you. Yeah. That's fair enough, isn't it? It could go either way. Yeah. Right, thank you, Councillor. So Councillor Jones has disclosed a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 19.4 as to his dealings with cattle agents who have tendered. It's a matter for council to now determine as to whether or not Councillor Jones, in spite of their conflict of interest, you feel that he can conduct deal with this matter in the public interest. Okay, so do we have a motion? I move it for Councillor. Okay, come forward with the motion. Thank you, Councillor Henschen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to move the motion in relation to Councillor Jones that I don't believe he has a perceived or declarable conflict of interest in this matter.
Yeah, so Councillor Henschen, you'll move the motion that Councillor Jones is able to remain in the room and that notwithstanding any conflict, may participate in the meeting, discuss and vote upon it. You're happy with that motion, Councillor Henschen?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, yes.
Thank you. Do we have a second for such? Councillor Froelich, thank you. We're going to go to the vote on this, unless anyone wishes to speak for or against.
I just want to confirm, my only concern is that we all have the same conflict of interest, so we're actually assessing the same level of conflict of interest here. I'm actually not necessarily comfortable in voting here because I'm voting to support my peers to sit in a room with the same conflict of interest that I have. So I just want clarity before I actually go to the vote. I'm actually not feeling very comfortable.
Okay, I don't have the reference number in front of me. Certainly if you're uncomfortable, if you wanted to step out, that would be not unreasonable. So then we can, if the mayor's amenable to that. I'm just, without diving into I suppose I can take a bit more time if you'd like, but is the conflict or the perceived conflict any greater or less than any other person within the region? And it would be under that exemption, and for my opinion, rather than, and it's councillors that have to vote, but if asked, the conflict that's raised, and certainly that it was dealt with at the standing committee, has already said that the councillors can stay in the room. For the purposes of the record, each one just needs to be dealt with individually, particularly today as a decision point. If any councillor at any time feels uncomfortable until the matter's been resolved in their favour or not, step out. That's their own individual choice. I'm sorry to be a bit vague on that, but that's quite rightly. I can't tell you to stay or go, but certainly the nature of this conflict, and to explain for the gallery, is given that not anyone with cattle, but a number of people across the regional council area buy and sell cattle through their yard. Is your conflict or potential conflict greater or less than any other person? No. Would you be able to still act in the public interest? That's a declaration for each individual, and certainly from the declarations at the committee meeting, going back and review, I understand that councillors have indicated they can act in the best interest or in the public interest. So yeah, so councillor, if you want to step out, it's certainly understandable.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I believe all of my colleagues can act in the best interest as per the discussion at the committee meeting. But at the committee meeting, I thought we actually all stepped out of the room. Well, council decided our level of conflict.
At the committee meeting, you stepped out, and the three that were in the room, which is lawful, deemed it was not a conflict, but it was as a group. What I'm chasing is as an individual, in case there was, yes, everyone's listed the same or similar conflict and the way it's been presented, but each one needs to be just dealt with individually. I apologise in advance. It's a
Oh no, don't apologise.
Nuisance possibly as far as process, but just each one of these at this meeting really does need its own resolution.
Yeah. No, fully understand. I am going to step out of the room though. I don't feel comfortable voting on a conflict that I actually have. Thank you.
Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Councillor Shoemaker. I think that there is a declarable conflict of interest. However, that what we're voting on is that we can actually participate in an impartial manner, but we do actually have a conflict. So I would like to actually step out as well.
Yep, you're welcome to do so. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Henschen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, look, this is the world we live in with conflict of interest, isn't it? So, along with Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Duff and Councillor Jones, I'd be very comfortable in stepping out of the meeting, the chambers as well.
Thank you, Councillor Henschen. And we'll note, Linnell, that all three councillors have elected. So we'll withdraw the motion now, Linnell, if we could, please.
Don't,
So we have the motion as presented there. Do we have a mover for such? Councillor Potter.
Yes.
Councillor Froeloff has now seconded. So we could just change that Councillor Potter has moved the motion, that Council resolved that Councillor Jones has a declarable conflict of interest in the matter, and notwithstanding the conflict, Councillor Jones participate in the matter, discuss and vote upon it. That is your motion, Councillor Potter?
yes, Mr Mayor, because
Yes,
I
thank
believe
you.
he will have no greater or lesser from this.
Yes. Good, thank you. And you're comfortable with that motion as presented, Councillor Froeloff, in seconding such?
Yes, Mayor, I do.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak for or against? It's only going to be myself with the three of us here. So we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we'll continue.
Well, Mayor, as I was going to say, given the voluntary declarations by the other three, do we just want to do them all with the three and the... Yep.
On the basis that all three have volunteered to not participate in this particular matter, could we change the resolution to include? We do it. Okay. So if we can put that up, Linnell. Do we have councillor wishing to move a motion that the remaining three councillors? Oh, we'll continue to one at a time then, Mr CEO. Okay. Councillor Shoemaker, Division 3. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Froeloff. Seconder. Councillor Potter. Speakers? No, we're going through the process. Gallery, this is the mechanism we have to go through, so please bear with us. So Councillor Shoemaker. So the motion as presented by Councillor Froeloff, seconded by Councillor Potter, Council resolves that Councillor Shoemaker has a declarable conflict of interest in the matter, and notwithstanding the conflict, Councillor Shoemaker participate in the matter, discuss and vote upon it. Mover and seconder, you're comfortable with the motion as presented? Okay, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll move on to Councillor Duff. Okay, do we have a mover for the same motion for Councillor Duff? Councillor Potter, seconder. Councillor Froeloff, thank you. So the motion is as presented. Moved by Councillor Potter, seconded by Councillor Froeloff. The Council resolved that Councillor Duff has a declarable conflict of interest in the matter, and notwithstanding the conflict, Councillor Duff participate in the matter, discuss and vote upon it. Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll now deal with Councillor Henschen, Division 6. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froeloff, seconder. Councillor Potter. So the motion moved by Councillor Froeloff, seconded by Councillor Potter, is Councillor resolved that Councillor Henschen has a declarable conflict of interest in the matter, and notwithstanding the conflict, Councillor Henschen participate in the matter, discuss and vote upon it. Speakers for or against? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. General Manager, would you be kind enough to bring all four councillors back to the meeting? Thank you. Welcome back, councillors. Thank you for your guidance, Mr CEO. It can be challenging sometimes navigating the new legislation that we have to deal with in relation to conflict of interest, but the matter has been now resolved, and we'll move on to our next item, which is 6.1. We have a deputation from Susan Mollenhauer, And from Penny, we have 15 minutes to hear your deputation. So you can both come up, if you like, to the lectern. So Susan, you're going to present first, and Penny, you can come up and stand beside Susan, and then when Susan's finished, then you can present to council. So we'll have 15 minutes in total, which will take us through to 9:30. Thank you, Susan, and welcome to you both.
Did the email go around, or should I just hand out the paper copies? That's what I was going to. Good morning, Mayor Otto, fellow councillors and ladies and gentlemen in the gallery. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address council this morning to express my concerns regarding the council's decision at the previous meeting to not support having approximately 20 magpies that are dangerous removed from our local region. I am only here in my capacity to speak about the one magpie that terrorises my family along Boat Mountain Road in Mergen where we live. Penny McGill, a Kingaroy resident, will also speak shortly about how magpies are greatly affecting her quality of life in Kingaroy as well. After the tragic event in Brisbane in early August, where a five-month-old baby girl was killed due to the mother swooping from a dangerous magpie, I really do feel this matter needs to be reconsidered by council. This is not only for the safety of my own family, but for all residents that live in the South Burnett and a lot of other residents from the greater population that use our South Burnett rail trail. My family has had countless incidents with a magpie that lives along Boat Mountain Road. This magpie has been sweeping our family while walking and riding for over 7 years. Unfortunately, despite our efforts to feed him or to only walk our bikes through his territory, not ride them, he continues to attack us each time we travel along Boat Mountain Road. Despite most research stating that magpies only swoop for 6 to 8 weeks timeframe each year, the magpie along Boat Mountain Road starts swooping my family in April and continues through to December. I'll say that again. It starts in April and it goes to December. So it's more like 8 weeks my family can feel safe outside, not 8 weeks where we can't. At the peak of his aggressiveness during the seasons, my sons can't even ride their bikes on our front driveway because there is a light post on the corner of our block, which the magpie likes to sit on, and as soon as my children go outside on their bikes, he's onto them. I'm a person who loves to walk for exercise and mental health. I'm too afraid to go walking anymore. I'm too afraid to go riding anymore. So I've had to buy a $500 gym membership so that I can exercise for my own physical and mental well-being because of one bird. The incident that has really brought the most concern to me and why I'm here today is in early August this year, my eldest son, Cooper, who is 14, Councillor Jones, you've met my son. He was a young boy that made the glider at the Mergen High Arts Night last week. He's not a little boy. He's taller than me, bigger than me, and a lot braver than me. A couple of weeks ago, when he was riding to high school one morning, he was hit that hard by this magpie, it caused him to swerve all the way across the gravel on the other side of the road. About a week later, the same magpie was responsible for scratching his face on the way to school. I work as a primary school teacher and I work out of town, out of Mergen, 3 days a week. My son has no other option but to ride his bike to school or walk. And there is no alternate route from where we live into the high school, unless you want to divert for about an hour or more. So it is really quite a concern to me. These are just two of the incidences that my family has experienced from this one magpie, who nests in a tree, which is on council land. It has been suggested to me by a council staff member that if I wanted the bird removed, I will need to pay $729 to have it removed privately. This bird does not reside in a nest in a tree on my own property. So I don't understand why the burden of $729 should fall on me, plus my $2,500 in rates I pay each year to the council. If you'd like to flick through the presentation I have prepared, I'd hope to put it on the screen, but due to live streaming, we can't. I've got it there. Oh, beautiful. So slide number 2, that's a photo of my son's helmet. If you'd really like to see it in close, that's it. So that's where I'm coming from. I've had numerous people say to me, oh, but it's only for 6 to 8 weeks, toughen up. It's not for 6 to 8 weeks in our case. They've told us, we'll go feed him and make friends. He doesn't want to be fed. And then a few times we have attempted, I don't really feel like walking half a kilometre down the road just to get attacked. Okay. I'm very concerned about this magpie. I've also had a few council members say to me, it's only for 6 to 8 weeks, try and feed it, go a different way, walk when you hop off your boat. But the comment that really upset me the most when speaking to a council staff member the other week about the removal of the magpie, she compared me and my family to the magpie. She said, how would you like it if we took you away from your children? You can understand how upsetting that was. I understand that the magpies are protecting their family, but I'm only trying to protect mine. And I would like to think that the welfare of my children is more important than that of a magpie. And it's not only just my child. The Boat Mountain Road is where a lot of people walk every day along in Mergen. It's a nice straight stretch, nice and flat, nice and easy to walk on. So it interferes with a lot of other people as well. If you want to just go through the PowerPoints a little bit more, that's a map I found. I've highlighted where the tree is and where our house is. And then there's a satellite shot showing which tree the magpie is nesting on, which is on council footpath. Moving down to the next slide. This is a Queensland Government fact sheet that is found on the internet. I'd just like to highlight a couple of sections in that. It says, to try and protect yourself from magpies, avoid the zone defended by the male magpie if you can. Unfortunately, we don't have an alternate route into town. Another one, it says, some magpies only attack bike riders and will swoop them even if they're outside their defence zone. If you get off your bike and walk, the magpie should leave you alone. I actually have video footage on the next few slides if you have time to look at it to say that doesn't actually work for this magpie. Moving down to the next slide, the other videos, you can have a look at them in your own time if you would like to. But he swoops whether you walk, whether you ride, whether you get off your bike and walk. And my husband actually took this video footage and all of a sudden the magpie decided to start swooping him standing still and wasn't even worried about my children on the road. So he is one nasty little bird, unfortunately. You can just keep going down. And the next one. So this is the same fact sheet, highlighting. This is from the Queensland Government. It is now accepted that in a very small number of male magpies, something triggers overly defensive responses to people when they enter a nesting area. This response can result in serious injury, creating a safety hazard from direct contact with the magpie. There is a reported case of a person dying of tetanus from a magpie scratch. So it's not just the swooping, it's actually other stuff as well. It also says in the same fact sheet that the department licenses commercial bird relocators to assess and remove dangerous magpies. Moving down to the next slide. On South Burnett Online, it was quoted that Councillor Scott Henschen said he was worried about the unethical moving of the magpies, making it someone else's problem. In the fact sheet, it clearly says that the problem magpie is transported to at least 50 kilometres away in a straight line and where possible at least 10 kilometres away from the nearest human settlement. Therefore, it's not unethical because they relocate it to a place where there is no one. That's the whole point of it. And in regards to, I know people are concerned then about the welfare of the female magpie and the chicks. It's also reported that once the male magpie has been removed, quite often another male magpie, I'm losing my voice, the male magpie moves in and adopts the young and the mother, and then they start their new family. So it's not of a concern for the welfare of the bird at all. Going down to the next slide, highlighting also on here, it says on the fact sheet that it's the owner of the property on which the nest is located. It is their responsibility to remove the bird. However, it does say landowners have a duty of care to ensure the safety of anyone on the land they manage. Now, if the nest was in a tree on my own block, I wouldn't be here today. I would have had the magpie removed already because it would be my responsibility. However, the tree is not in my yard. It's in nobody's yard. It's on a council footpath. Moving down to the next slide, just a few little research tidbits I found while preparing for today's presentation. It says in one that thousands of people are injured every year from magpies. Australian magpies are as intelligent as a 3 or 4-year-old, and if anyone's had a toddler, they know they can be quite cunning and vindictive when they want to be. It says that magpies can swoop frequently, and there are some that are super swoopers. They're just nasty birds, and that's the end of it. It's only a small percentage of birds that become very dangerous, and unfortunately the one that lives along Boat Mountain Road, I believe, is one of them. There's also a lot of conflicting evidence when you read research. Some say you should look at the magpies, so then they won't swoop you. Other research says don't look at the magpie. One says put cable ties on your helmet, one says it makes no difference. So there's a lot of conflicting evidence about what you should or should not do. If we can just scroll down to the last bit, because I'd like to let Penny to speak now. I know I said I'm only here, just one more down. I know I said I'm only here to speak in regards to the magpie along Boat Mountain Road, but I found a website yesterday called Magpie Alert. So you can go on and you can register when you've been swooped and attacked by a magpie. I didn't know about this website till yesterday, so I'm presuming many, many don't. The map on your right is where magpie attacks have been reported to this website. The map on the left is the rail trail. I don't need to say anything more. Next slide down if we could, please. This is actually from the South Bennett Regional Council website in regard to dangerous dogs. And I thought this grew quite a good similarity. In your website, you've got people have a right to feel safe in the community. I don't feel safe. I really don't. And I fear for my children. Okay. Also, it says how victims are impacted from dangerous dogs when they're attacked or bitten. It says being attacked by a dog can produce serious physical, psychological and emotional effects. Even if the victim's not bitten, the threat of an attack can cause lasting trauma. I won't walk down the road anymore, and I will not ride my bike down the road anymore. I'm too scared because I don't like it. And if I can finally finish, this was this was written by, this was a post on the Magpie Alert website just about a month ago by a person by the name of Peter, and I thought this summed up very good. The tragic death of a child after it fell when its mother was attacked in a park in Brisbane reminds us that being attacked by magpies is highly distressing for some people. In an earlier era, before almost universal car ownership, and far more adults, particularly mothers and older people, walked around, council and territory governments used to get rid of the minority of magpies that were attacking people. We live in a more sentimental age where most people drive or are driven everywhere, and people imagine magpies as part of our natural landscape. In reality, they thrive in the treed urban, garden-rich in meat that is of our own creation. They are beautiful birds with a beautiful sound, but they should not be allowed to cause distress and force people to give up walking or cycling where they need to go. If there are magpies seriously disturbing your life or that of others, don't settle for a sign that will just encourage people to drive or drive their kids instead. Get the council to move them before someone is hurt, and if there is resistance, remind them of the child in Brisbane. So I've been very nervous and very extremely worried coming and speaking today because I'm really quite worried what people are going to think of me. I really want to point out I'm not an animal hater, I'm an animal lover, and I know it's been reported on social media, but we've got to think about the welfare of the magpie. I agree, our job as a human is to protect animals, but my first and foremost job as a mother is to protect my children. So thank you, and I'll hand over to Penny now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be short and brief and to the point. I've been attacked by magpies for 10 years at the caravan park. It's not their fault. It's not the birds' fault. It's just the way birds are. I have given myself a self-defence course, and the injury to my helmet, this is my third helmet I've been through. I have sort of changed my ways of going to the shops because there's no other way. You have to go out of the one gate. I ride with an umbrella, which is not real good on a windy day. I keep a stick with some streamers on it on my bike at all times and wave them. I get a whack in now and again by accident. I'm not trying to hurt them. I'm just trying to protect myself. I changed some of my behaviours by shopping at night because they've gone to bed, doing my porta potty run, which is half a kilometre from my side. I do that at night, and what's the other thing? Oh, I forget, but I've accommodated myself a different way for from April, May, from June they start where we are, June to December. I started feeding them a year or so ago, thinking that would stop them from attacking, but it's made them worse. They are attacking me 2 or 3 at a time, and they're not just males. But I accept this is the way it is, but it's not good enough. I'm getting pretty old. I just had a birthday for 77 years, and I don't heal as quick. I don't know what can be done about them, because I was quoted 300. Gee, that was only a cheap, that was a dear one you got the quote for. I was quoted about $250 to $300 to remove a magpie. But see, you're just moving the problem somewhere else, and another bird will come in and take over the female. There used to be one at Cheers Triangle. That one used to get me every year, but her mate was killed in an accident, which I witnessed, and I thought, hallelujah, hooray. There's been no trouble since, because she's still living with her offspring, son. I know them well. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak and just state my case. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Penny, and thank you, Susan. Yeah, yes, yes. Just we'll take 1 minute to do that if we could. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Craig. And of course, Craig is president of the Shade Society. Good to see you, Craig. Thank you. Okay, so we've had the deputation concluded. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move on the back of what's been said this morning, a motion that Council delegate authority to the General Manager of Communities for the engagement of a licensed provider to relocate magpies that have been reported to have caused injury or harm to any person within the South Burnett region.
Okay, Councillor, so you're moving that off the floor. We'll just get that up on the screen for the benefit of your fellow councillors. I'll have you confirm, Councillor, that the motion as presented is correct.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion moved up the floor by Councillor Duff that Council delegate authority to the General Manager of Communities for the engagement of a licensed provider to relocate magpies that have been reported to have caused injury or harm to any person within the South Burnett region. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillor Duff, you have the right to speak first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to follow on from what Susan Mollenhauer has said, and also Penny McGill. I've just got two letters and they've been circulated to the councillors, but I'm just going to read them for the benefit of the gallery. The first one is from Jason Wyeth, the Secretary of the South Burnett Rail Trail Users Association. Dear Mayor and councillors, I'm writing on behalf of our association to express our support for the removal of dangerous magpies from key spots around the South Burnett. Our definition of dangerous would be those magpies that continually and over a period of time make contact with passersby and cause injury. An example of this would be the magpie at Dingo Creek in Wandai. This magpie has been making contact with passersby for a number of years now. Most recently, I was a first-hand witness to two of these incidents. Two riders were injured while riding past Dingo Creek. This magpie made contact with the riders under their sunglasses, millimetres from their eyes. Blood was drawn on both occasions. It is our belief that this type of aggressive bird should be safely and humanely removed. This removal should be made by a certified and qualified bird relocator as per guidelines outlined by Queensland Department of Environment and Science. Whilst we are very grateful for the hard work of council staff in swiftly erecting swooping magpie signage, especially along the rail trail, we believe that it is only a matter of time before one of the birds described above causes a serious accident to a passerby, and we believe that this should be avoided at all costs. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. Cheers, Jason Wyeth, Secretary South Burnett Rail Trail Users Association. And the second letter is from Jason Ford. Hi Mayor, Otto and councillors. Councillor Cathy Duff spoke with me on the phone last week regarding various reports she has received regarding aggressive magpies on the South Burnett Rail Trail. Many users of the trail are reporting attacks from several of the birds, resulting in injuries and also emotional trauma to very young children. It also brings to my mind more serious accidents in other Australian regions, such as a 5-month-old baby from Brisbane who died after her mother stumbled while trying to dodge a swooping magpie. And in 2019, an elderly man died after trying to avoid a magpie attack on his bike on the New South Wales south coast. Unfortunately, I've recently stopped riding the rail trail for a few months until the magpie breeding season ends, as I was attacked by 4 different magpies on my most recent ride from Kingaroy to Memorandee. One of the attacks drew blood. Last year, I was sliced an inch from my eye in an attack on the rail trail, and only last month, one of the riders of the Ride for Relay bike ride was slashed by a magpie only millimetres from his eye. And sadly, there have been unconfirmed reports that magpies are possibly targeted by some locals in retaliation for attacks, taking it into their own hands. And dead magpies have been seen on the side of the trail. Councillor Duff suggested to me that there is a possibility of council engaging a specialist to relocate the most aggressive magpies from the rail trail to minimise the risks posed to the many community members and tourists who use the trail during magpie season, also protecting those birds from the potential harm from disgruntled trail users. Providing a bird catching specialist can safely relocate the birds without harming them or endangering the birds' offspring. I would support this proposal and encourage all councillors to formally support it. Kind regards, Jason. That's from Jason Ford. So I'm just going to leave it at that and hopefully get the support of council. Thank you.
Okay, other speakers? Councillor Jones. Oh, sorry, no. General Manager, did you want to contribute? Thank you.
Yeah, just probably a point of order through you, Mr Mayor, that the council must delegate directly to the CEO, the Mayor, or a standing committee. So the resolution is essentially should be that council engage a licensed provider and a budget allocation be made. So there's no, local government doesn't allow delegation direct to a general manager. It needs to go to the CEO, or council can just make a resolution that we engage one and the budget allocation be made.
Thank you very much, General Manager, for clarifying that, and point of order is very much accepted and acknowledged. Councillor Duff, are you happy to remove the words delegate authority? So you only need to delegate the authority to the CEO? Are you happy to insert the Chief Executive Officer in there?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay. In place of the General Manager of Communities. Thank you, Linnell. Councillor Shoemaker, are you comfortable with that change as a seconder?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd also like to propose another change to the resolution. Just noting the presentation we've just had, I do agree on the fact sheet that's presented. It said that local councils may have a policy in place, and being the conversation that we've had and being that the discussions we'd had to this point were for an ad hoc sort of magpie relocator to come and help us in some of these situations that we have, I think it is important for this council to develop a policy that actually informs the strategic direction for the number of years that may follow. So I'm mindful that on this case we're saying yes, we'd like to engage a licensed provider to relocate the magpies that have caused injury or harm. I would just like to set that down in policy for council moving forward. So I think on this instance we should move quickly, being that magpie season is currently in full swing. However, I do think we should also move to adopt a policy or renew our policy that we may already have in relation to magpies.
Councillor, that being the case, are you intending, is it your intent to move an amendment to the motion, or are you suggesting you would put forward an additional motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to move an amendment to the motion, yep.
Okay.
So that council delegates the authority to the CEO for the engagement of a licensed provider to relocate magpies that have been reported to have caused injury or harm to any person within the South Burnett region. And then a second point, that council develop a policy regarding magpie removal. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, councillor, now that's not necessarily a substantive change, Mr CEO. If, with the consent of the mover and seconder, are we able to now take that as a substantive motion, in your view? Thank you. Okay. Councillor Duff? Good, thank you. So we now have that motion as presented. It's been with consent of the mover and the seconder. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Potter?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. For those of you that know me quite well, you will know that I'm totally against the removal of magpies. I always have been. I'm also against shark nets, so I believe that we're in their space. But because of this presentation today, I will actually vote for this motion. So that was a good presentation. But I will still, it's still not in my heart. I will vote for this, but for me, in my personal self, I find it really hard to vote for it, but I will still vote for it for the sake of the community and the rail trail. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Other speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I take all these points, fantastic presentation, take all the letters read and all that sort of stuff. It has certainly highlighted the rail trail. My concerns, and I probably won't support this today, simply on the fact that how do we identify, how are we going to get the message out, how many numbers are we limited it to 20, as if I'll stand corrected, but we said we were going to take 20 magpies out of the region, and a prime example is that magpie that Susan has just presented. But how many people across our region? How do we know who's going to identify these magpies? Are we going to give the same opportunity to everybody that hasn't come forward? And I will say this, on social media that's been put out and asking questions, there has been just as many people saying don't take them as what there is take them and move them. And I totally understand. And that issue in Brisbane, we're using that, and I understand fully it was just an unbelievable loss for that mother. Absolute freak of nature how that happened. But I'm talking about the whole region. I understand, councillor, you're sitting here shaking your head and you're in disbelief, but I am trying to make a decision on the whole of the council. Now, are we going to give everybody? I went and played golf on the weekend and there was magpies swooping. Not just one, there was 2 or 3. I know it's on a golf course and I know this is on council land, this particular one. But do we have an obligation then to the community and to remove all these magpies? And it only takes one person to be attacked and got. So all I'm saying is, understand where we're coming from as a council. I'm not against the idea, but at this stage, there's nothing in there to say how many we're going to remove, the cost of it. I think it was $11,000 or $12,000 to remove 20. So it is up around $600. Susan was quite correct in around that 700 mark. So 20 magpies at 600 is close on that 11 or 12,000. So all I'm saying is, totally understand what's going on. I've been attacked by magpies, been busted and all that sort of stuff. Councillor Potter's comments in regards to, yeah, it's their space, but we do have an obligation to the community. But where do we stop that obligation? By saying, there's nothing here saying, oh yeah, we're going to open it all up to the whole region, because I'll guarantee you there's more than these 4 or 5 along the rail trail and the one particular one on Boat Mountain. So all I'm saying is, as a council, where are we drawing the line? How do we work out which is dangerous, which is bad and all that sort of stuff? Susan's got a very bad one. I'm not arguing the case at all, but I'm trying to be fair to the whole region and every constituent that's in this region. That's my question. On that I can't support that unless there's, I don't know.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Henschen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors, and the presentation today. Yeah, I've been quoted at saying several things about magpies. As Councillor Potter has alluded to, just because I'm rural, I don't take out anything that's a threat to the industry or the community. But magpies are a seriously intelligent bird. There's been 3 deaths from magpies over a very long period of time. There's been a tetanus. There's been an elderly gentleman that was swooped upon and he fell off his push bike and hit his head on a tree. And of course the tragedy with the mother in Brisbane, as Councillor Jones alluded to. We need not touch any more on that. Can I just say, and I'm going to throw some figures, magpies are a protected species. Now, so are brown snakes. Between 1979 and 1998, 53 deaths occurred with brown snake bites. From 1942 to 1950, there was 56 deaths from snake bites. Currently, per 100,000 people per capita, there's between 3 to 18% snake bites. At the current stage where we're in, the mortality of snake bite deaths is 0.03%, is roughly 1 to 2 people per annum. My point with this is there's been some seriously great work done in snake bites, snake deaths, and the education of people and how they address snakes. I can understand with your sons where they walk to school, and I think Councillor Shoemaker has brought a very, very good motion to the table in relation to a policy where I would be fully supportive of a policy that Council adopts where in the event of particular magpies in particular circumstances, we look at. But as Councillor Jones has alluded to, we're talking 20 magpies. In the South Burnett, I would suggest there could be 220. I can't support this. I'm in favour of doing something with magpies in time, but I think we've got a lot of work to do in this space. And as you've alluded to, they're a beautiful bird. They can form wonderful friendships, but they can be the exact opposite as well and be a damn pest and a nuisance. But I think if Council can work on a policy, and we've got some work to do in this space in developing that policy in time, that we manage incidents, and it might not just be magpies. But what's going to happen if all of a sudden everyone's complaining about brown snakes on the rail trail and we've got to remove them? I'm just saying, there's no comparison, but it's an educational thing as how people handle things in time. And I think the statistics with the snakes has proven that over the last 50 to 70 years, our deaths have declined from 53, roughly about 7 to 8 a year, to down to 1 or 2. That's a mindset and an education thing. So I feel for the people and the attacks on yourselves and the damage that they can do, but I think we've got some work to do in this space. So I won't be supporting this today at this point in time, but I take on board Councillor Shoemaker's and I look forward to what we can develop as a policy moving forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor Henschen. I'm just going to, Councillor Fryloff, is there anything you wanted to add before we look to wrap this up? Anything further from you? And then Councillor Potter, I'm going to give Councillor Potter one more opportunity to speak. Then we're going to go to Councillor Duff for the right of reply before we go to the vote. Only because Councillor Potter was sitting on the fence on this one. But if, all right, normally I wouldn't, but in this case I will give you both one more chance to speak after Councillor Fryloff.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I can't support this. I do support the policy council do up a policy on this. Yesterday, like we've got issues of magpies in the name gate, but yesterday I had the pleasure of getting something to eat at the pie van where there is supposed to be an issue of magpies attacking, and I've showed some of the staff, my fellow councillors, that I fed this magpie out of my hand. And that I do understand that there is certain magpies around the South Burnett that have that are dangerous and can attack, and that. But also, Councillor Jason Ford's letter of people taking thing in their own action and killing magpies. Well, if that's not going to stir up another magpie to attack, I don't know what would. Because I tell you, I'd be coming out fighting too if you knew your plan was being attacked. I'm full for the policy, but I'm sorry, I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Well, just briefly, if you could, thank you.
Yeah, just with regards to the wording here, we've got South Burnett region. This is extremely broad. It doesn't say South Bennett Regional Council area, which means, according to this, we go and remove birds off private land, as far as I can see it. So,
Sorry, Mayor. Actually, it's quite the opposite. We would not have legal authority to enter private property to touch a bird. Just whether we wanted to or not, it would not matter in council. So this would be limited to our controlled land only. And it's, we'll have to go back but the delegations and the authority under the Act to enter private property I don't believe would not cover us. I'm happy to stand corrected, but certainly if the resolution gets up, we'll check, but I don't think that we'd be able to enter private property.
And of course, Mr CEO, the legislation would always override any resolution of council. Thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be brief. I've listened. I do believe people have a right to feel safe in our community. I recognise how important that rail trail infrastructure is, and I also recognise how important it is for people to be able to actually go out and ride their bikes and things, for children to be able to be out on their street. I recognise that it's impossible for council to remove every aggressive magpie in the region. However, I do feel there needs to be criteria whereby if there are incidents like this that are repeated over a number of years, that we respond to those. As it has been pointed out to us today, landowners, being us, council, has a duty to ensure the safety of anyone on the land they manage. I'm very passionate about ensuring we have a policy that guides our organisation and certainly helps us to set up a budget allocation for this on a more regular basis. And I do think in this instance where we have had that research done, we've had Australia Post actual posties provide feedback to council as to where the top 20 most aggressive magpies are in the region. That was in the report, and I do think action needs to be taken. I've listened, I've looked at the helmets here today. It is proof enough for me that this council does need to do something about the aggressive magpies on the land in which we manage. And I do feel starting with a policy and actually just engaging a provider to help with these aggressive magpies that have been identified by Australia Post is important. So I'm in full support of this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duff, right of reply before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I've heard Councillor Jones's concerns, and I think that the motion clearly states that those have caused injury or harm. So that would be the line. Those magpies that have demonstrated injury or harm, as has Susan has pointed out, and also Penny pointed out. So the original motion that we put forward was for 20. This motion is different. This is about just the ones that are causing injury or harm, not just go and pick out 20 birds. So that's why I'm keen to have this one supported. And I think that clears it. And I'm really keen also to have a policy going forward so it's very, very clear and clarified. But I think in the interest of safety, because one of the reasons why this has been elevated, I believe, is because we've got the rail trail. And so we've got a lot more people using a path that would attract more swooping birds. So I think, as Councillor Shoemaker has said, we have an obligation to keep our community safe. If that was a dangerous dog and if a dog attacks someone and draws blood, it's a dangerous dog, and there's all sorts of rules and regulations. But we've got magpies hitting people just so close to their eye. It's only a matter of time before one of them actually does permanent injury to someone. I'm worried that that's going to happen. So I'm thinking that we need to be a forward-thinking progressive council, and we need to mitigate the possibility, the risk, and also, as Councillor Shoemaker has said, to make sure that our community is safe. So I'm keen to support this motion, and I hope that my fellow councillors will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Let's go to the vote on this. Those in favour? In favour, Councillor Duff, Councillor Potter. Councillor Otto, Councillor Duff, Councillor Potter, Councillor Shoemaker. Those against? Vote against Councillor Jones, Councillor Henschen and Councillor Froloff. Motion has been carried. 4 votes to 3. Thank you all. We'll now, and thank you to our petitioners providing that deputation today. We'll now move on to item 6.2 at page 8, which is a petition in relation to changing climate and its effect on the future, and requesting council consider declaring a climate emergency. Recommendation is that the petition be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer to determine appropriate action. Do we have a mover?
Mr Mayor, just it's missing the last little bit. You'll see in this next one, and a report back to a meeting of council. So that
sorry.
needs to be, that was...
Oh, that's not on my sheet, sorry.
Yeah, no, it just needs to be added in there. Sorry, no.
Oh, yes, okay, and determine appropriate action and report back to a meeting of council. Okay, all right, very good. Now, do we have a mover for that? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder. Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.3 is a petition from the students of Wheatland State School. That's at 9. Recommendation is that the petition be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer to determine appropriate action and report back to our meeting of council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconder. Councillor Froloff, thank you. Okay, speakers for or against? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.1, confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting held on the 25th of August 2021. They are provided in the agenda, and at page 10, the recommendation is that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 25th of August 2021 be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froloff, seconder. Councillor Henschen, thank you. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 8.1, business outstanding table for ordinary council meeting at 37. And the recommendation is that the business outstanding table for the ordinary council meeting be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconder. Councillor Henschen, thank you. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we're on to section 9 now. Which is the Corporate Services, People, Culture, Communication, Media, Finance and ICT section. Council, I would like to now, if I can, with the leave of the meeting, move a motion that, off the floor, that Council that a report be provided to Council at the October Corporate Services, People and Culture, Communications, Media, Finance and ICT Standing Committee meeting. So you could just copy it from the portfolio there. Yeah, that's the Executive and Finance. With a view to providing a 50% discount on all dog registration fees to qualifying pensioners. Mr. CEO, I might just get your guidance on my motion. Do you have any concerns with that?
So there was resolved at the last standing committee, so it's in the minutes that we'd bring a report back when the report was voted down. So we actually have noted in the minutes to bring a report back. We didn't, doesn't have give direction on with a view to providing all, but there would be a subsequent report to be brought back to the meeting for council to discuss. So,
Yep.
yeah, so anyway, yeah, I mean, that doesn't negate this, but there is already a commitment to bring a report back.
Right, okay.
That's the second part
That's
of
the
that,
second
is
part.
we don't have.
Don't have that. Okay, well, that being the case, I'm certainly keen to progress with the motion. If I could, I'm seeking a seconder. Seconder, Councillor Duff. Okay. Right. So of course we discussed this at the standing committee meeting, where the recommendation from the staff was that we don't provide a discount to pensioners, and that was certainly the reasons for such was articulated in a comprehensive report from the staff. However, of course, so that was left at the status quo, as that recommendation put through as a motion was defeated. So on that basis, I've put this motion forward for consideration of council today, on the basis that we do have a number of, from what I've been able to ascertain, it certainly seems to be that there are a number of councils that do provide the 50% concession on dog registration fees to pensioners. So it would seem that, while I haven't looked at all councils across Queensland, there are a number of them that were identified in the report, that were discussed at the last meeting that do so. Well, I guess there's a few things with this, and to speak to the motion, number one is I think that I understand that, you know, the desexing of dogs does give a rise to a very concessional rate, but with many of the pensioners, they have very small dogs. They're often house dogs, lap dogs, with pensioners that are provided for company. And in some cases, they're even given to them by a family member who can no longer take care of them. And I don't think that those small dogs that are typically owned by pensioners tend to be the dogs that are going to be wandering or straying as a result of not being desexed. The cost of desexing is often prohibitive for pensioners, and I would like to think that we could provide some relief to pensioners. The cost of living for pensioners, and of course for all of us, is going up significantly, and of course pensioners aren't getting much in the way of increases to their age pension, and are certainly suffering from what I would see broadly across our region, many pensioners who are basically living fortnight to fortnight to balance their budget. If we could provide some relief to them in this regard, I think that would be a step in the right direction in supporting pensioners. And of course, there's also, in my view, the mental health benefits that come with having the companionship of a small dog. So they're probably the foundations of my argument in the motion. And I'll now go to other speakers. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question, perhaps for GMO May, in terms of quantifying a pensioner. Who is actually eligible for a pensionership, for a pensioner discount?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Previously, council had the policy where it was only aged pensioner, but I think earlier last year we extended it to all pension card holders.
Yes, thank you, GMO May. For those reasons, I will not be supporting this motion, Mr. Mayor. I believe that it's our role as a council to encourage responsible pet ownership. And if you have a look in this, in the quarterly financial report, the monthly financial report, sorry, that's been tabled at this meeting today, you'll see that fines for animal infringements have been reported to be up by 533% in our region. I will not be supporting this motion. I absolutely recognise it's important for everybody to have a pet and a dog, and I know how much how much joy that's brought to our family, but I also recognise that when I made that decision, I also made a commitment that I'll manage and that I will keep that dog, and I'll do that responsibly. And I'm concerned that by allowing a 50% discount for all pensioners, anyone with a pensioner card, everyone with a pensioner card, that if the costs of living are so prohibitive, that in some instances there may have to be a very difficult decision that you can't have an entire dog if you are on a pension, and that you will have to engage in one of the many animal management programs that we have, whereby you can have your pet or animal desexed at a discounted rate. And I only hope for those aged pensioners in our region that their families or someone may actually help them if that was so cost prohibitive. I'm about encouraging and ensuring responsible pet ownership in our region. I recognise how important it is to have a pet and animal, but I also recognise that when I and anybody else actually has a pet, we agree to the costs that are incurred when you have a pet. So I won't be supporting this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Other speakers? Councillor Duff? Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be voting for this motion. I voted for it last time and I'll vote for it again because I believe our pensioners need that companionship, and I think anything we can do to help ease the burden on the pensioners is the only way to go. But the only, as briefly mentioned before, I'd like to work on this a bit more, and if we can make this so it's aged pensioners, which would be a lot better. I know we did change our policy beforehand to make it all pensioners for the dogs, so we do need to look at this a little bit closer, and I would like to look at the fine tax within this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Duff, you had your light on.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I actually moved this motion last time, and the reason why I'm absolutely supporting this is because of the cost of to de-sex a male dog can cost up to $250, to de-sex a female can cost up to $450. These are companion dogs for pensioners. Pensioners are already doing it tough, and when you're looking at, on top of that, to have those costs for de-sexing, and also the other councils are actually doing it. I googled last night, Cairns has a fee for an entire dog at $136. Pensioner concession is 50%, $68. In Brisbane City Council, a non-de-sexed dog is $113.20. Their pensioner discount 50%. Their pensioners are paying $56.50. So other councils are looking at it. Other councils are trying to help their pensioners. I think we should be a compassionate council doing the same thing. As Mayor Otto has said, most of these dogs are companion dogs. They're not the target dogs that are out, the big dogs that are going out causing all sorts of concern in our community. They're mostly little dogs in the house with the pensioners. So I'm absolutely 100% committed to supporting our pensioners in this case. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Other speakers? Councillor Henschen.
Quickly, Mr Mayor, yes, well, I put my case forward the last time this was brought up. Everybody knows what sort of a dog and an animal lover I am. I have both. My family has both. Councillor Shoemaker has brought it to the point, and I'll say it again. A de-sexed dog becomes a much more manageable dog, a much tidier dog, cleaner dog, and an absolute joy to have around. If they were, and I've said it before, if you think they're good at being entire, they become an absolute magnificent partner when they're de-sexed. First-hand experience, so no, I can't support this. We keep comparing to other councils, Cairns, Brisbane, population. I don't think that comes into it. We've got some work to do in a lot of spaces, but you're talking, and I've said it, you can go to your vets. There's incentives there for pensioners to talk to vets. $250 to $450, I can assure you, vets will look after pensioners. So, yeah, I can't be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Henschen. Any other speakers before we wrap this one up? Councillor Fraloff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I actually agree with Danita Potter, Councillor Potter. Like, I believe, yes, look after the pensioners, but also I'd like to have it worked on a bit more of age pensioners, more age pensioners than just straight across the board of pensioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fraloff. Look, I'll just wrap up with right of reply. I'm very open-minded to the suggestions by Councillor Potter and Councillor Fraloff as to aged pensioners. And I think that that's something that we could certainly work through when the report's brought back. And General Manager, if that could be considered as part of the report as to whether it would be prudent for Council to consider limiting this to age pensioners, I'm certainly open-minded to that if that's the view of Council, should this motion be passed and a report brought back. So that's probably it. I think I've probably said all I needed to say on the matter. Let's go to the vote on this one, Council. So those in favour? Okay, Councillor Linnell, Councillor Otto, Councillor Duff, Fraloff and Potter. Thank you. Those against? Councillor Jones, Councillor Henschen and Councillor Shoemaker. So the motion has been carried, 4 votes to 3. Thank you all. Right, we have the next item, 9.1 at 60, which is the Australia Day change of location and appointment of councillor representatives for the judging panel, page 60, and the recommendation there is provided, council, that the council, regional council, location for the Australia Day awards ceremony be held at Blackbutt on Sunday afternoon, the 23rd of January 2022, at the, and there are 2 venue options, Blackbutt Town Hall with up to 120 people indoors, or the Blackbutt Showgrounds up to 500 outdoors. Secondly, that South Bennett Regional Council confirm following councillors, previously Mayor Otto, Deputy Mayor Jones and Councillor Duff for the judging panel for the year 2022, and review committee members appointed to the panel. So I'm now going to call on any councillor that would like to put forward, fill the gaps in and put forward a motion. Do we have anyone that would like to add to the recommendation? Is there a desire in council to look at the Blackbutt Showgrounds? Councillor Jones, what are your thoughts as the divisional councillor?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, Blackbutt Town Hall, 120 people. I think we get more than that when we get to the Australia Day Awards. Pete, would that be a fair comment? We get more than 120?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I think last year we were, with COVID, restricted down to just under 200 and we had people outside.
So in hearing that, Mr Mayor, I would suggest that we go to the showgrounds just for the surety of having enough room for anybody above 120 people, so that we can all set it up properly and all that. It's a good facility down there now. They've got plenty of undercover area, and yeah, so there'd be plenty of room and good facilities for that sort of stuff.
So, Councillor, if I could just interject, I think, Mr Chair, we might deal with this in 2 parts because there's 2 separate elements to this.
Yep.
So you're happy, Councillor Jones, to put a motion forward
Yep.
At the Blackbutt Showgrounds?
Yep.
And we'll deal with that first in terms of location?
Yep.
Yep. So Councillor Jones has put that motion up. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Froloff, thank you. Councillor Jones, now opportunity to speak further if you wanted to the motion. Thank you.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, just to re-endorse again the Blackbutt Showgrounds. We always get more than 120 people, so to make it convenient and easy access for the people, it's got great wheelchair access, all that sort of stuff. You can get right around, toilets, a whole lot. Great facility, so Blackbutt Showgrounds, just for the surety of having room for more than 120 people.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Other speakers? Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Now, the second element, Council, is is confirming the following councillors for the judging panel for the year 2022 and reviewing community members appointed to the panel. So we might just look at the appointment of councillors in the first instance. And does anyone have a motion that they would like to move? Motion of that. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just had a question, more of anything, being that this is certainly only my second year as a councillor. What the process has traditionally been for nominating councillors and community members to this panel? Perhaps a question to CEO Mark. I'd just like to understand how this has worked.
I think in conjunction with the chair, generally each year with the panel, actually have very little to do with the actual judging process, which is, I'm not sure if any of the other general managers have, but Peter, but generally council appoints councillors by resolution to these panels, because that also negates any potential conflict of interest because your council's representative, hence the resolution. Since we've had a bit of a change this year with the venue, it was just as much as to confirm the councillors on the panel or see what council wanted to do.
I think I'd like to deal with that in the first instance, and then I think we need to do further work in terms of, I'm keen to do further work in terms of the ceremonial process. Point 1, I'd like to see councillors play a larger role in the presentations of awards, and I'd like to see, and there will also be the need to look at the role of the MC in that context then. So rather than the MC necessarily presenting the awards, it may well be that councillors can do that and the MC more provides a facilitation role. I felt that perhaps last year councillors didn't really have a meaningful role as such, other than going up on stage and having photos taken. I think Councillor Shoemaker articulated that, and I'm certainly of the same mind. In terms of the community members, there will be a need for us to address that as well, because some of them aren't here any longer. For example, Principal Rodiger has now moved to Toowoomba. So I think we'll need to reconsider that. I'm thinking that might be something, Mr CEO, we could do through a workshop perhaps, to look at where does council want to go with the format, and what will then be the role of the MC. And as part of that workshop, you know, how do we want to see an appropriate assignment of community members to judging? So, for example, I'd like to see that we have perhaps an Indigenous representative from somewhere in our community that represents the Indigenous people of the region. So there's those sorts of issues I think we still need to discuss. And I'm happy if council is to leave that to a workshop discussion, Mr CEO, and perhaps today, if council, with the leave of council, to just focus simply on the appointment through resolution of the 3 nominated members from council. So does anyone wish to nominate? I guess from my point of view, I'd certainly, as the Mayor, would like to remain on the panel. It's a matter of then of whether that is something that council is in agreement with, and if so, then who are the other 2 councillors you'd like to add to that panel? So does anyone have a motion that they'd like to put up? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to step down and give the other councillors a go, the newer councillors, Councillor Henschen, Councillor Shoemaker, and so I haven't spoke to the other councillors, of course, but I'm happy to just say that I'm happy to step down as being on that panel and give one of the newer councillors an opportunity to sit on that. It is quite a good thing, and you can, it's quite pleasurable actually to go through it and make the decisions of the big achievers in our community. And I'm not underselling this. I've been involved in it, and I've certainly appreciated it, but I'm happy to give other councillors an opportunity to have that experience.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. So we're just working our way towards a motion here. No, but no, we certainly need to know that before we can come up with the motion. Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors, Councillor Duff, your thoughts? You were on there as well.
Yeah, I've been on there for a long time. The reason why I've always been put on there is because a lot of it's about local knowledge, and the Merg and Wandai end I was sort of covered off on that end, because some of the panel were more towards Kingaroy. So yeah, but I'm easy. It doesn't, if someone else wants to do it, but that's the only reason I sat on there, just because of the Merg and Wandai end and Proston and all that area. So, and there again, it would depend on who the community reps were that had that same knowledge. But yeah, so just keen either way. Doesn't worry me.
I think I'm also keen to see representation from Divisions 1 or 2, if I can say. I mean, we're going to have it in Blackbutt this year. We've got a big one in Nanango next year. And I'd like to think that perhaps we can have someone representing from that area part of the world. So I'd like to actually move that South Bennett Regional Council confirm the following councillors: Mayor Otto, Councillor Potter and Councillor Froloff to be the judging panel this year. So I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Speakers for or against? Anyone else would like to nominate? Or
I think so.
no? Councillor Duff?
I'm thinking that just because of what I said before, maybe it would be prudent to have Councillor Henschen, because that then you're covering that Wandai Mergen end.
Can we have 4 councillors, Mr CEO? Yeah, I'm happy to include Councillor Henschen in my motion. Are you happy to second that, Councillor Shoemaker? Yeah? So can we just change that motion to include Councillor Henschen to cover Division 6 and that northern end of the region? So we've got the motion there. Other speakers? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd just like you to consider in your motion review of community members appointed to the panel, and, a discussion or a workshop about the event. so that councillors can have a little bit more involvement in the actual Australia Day celebrations and be across the event. Yeah, something. I think it's important that we start having those conversations, because certainly I just turned up. I didn't see a schedule or anything beforehand, and I would have liked to have had a bit more knowledge and understanding of the event, the nominees, the whole process before actually arriving at the ceremony. So I actually think there needs to be some sort of workshop or discussion with councillors prior to actually progressing with the event preparations. So.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It's a really good point. I think perhaps now if we could just, again, make one more little change for the year 2003 and, yes, and that a workshop be held to consider the event format, role of councillors, appointment of the MC, and selection of community judging panel members. I'm happy to change the motion if you're comfortable with that, Councillor Shoemaker. Does that achieve the intent you're looking for? You comfortable with that?
Yes, definitely. I did just want to acknowledge long-standing MC John Carey, who certainly I had the pleasure of working with for a number of years. I know how much work he does actually put into his agenda and format in terms of actually the summaries and the extra homework and research he does do. So I know how much of an asset he was to the to this year's event and so many other events, and I'd just like to acknowledge that in the chamber. It's a giant job, and yeah, I think he always goes above and beyond in executing that role. So I'd just like to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll now wrap up and go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'll now move that we adjourn the meeting. I'm not here yet. So we have a bursary. We have a bursary presentation, and then we have morning tea. So can we perhaps... Right, so our bursary recipient hasn't arrived as yet. So we might keep going on then, Lionel, that being the case, and if you can let us know when the recipient arrives. 9.2, Mr CEO, sorry.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, this one won't take long. There was a slight... We actually have to become a member, so the enthusiasm for the pledge is totally and fully supported, and I think we're all in agreement. But if I could just beg with, you might notice Council's Standing Committee has just been amended a little bit, that we actually become a member and support the pledge, hence the difference.
Thank you, Mr CEO. So in that vein, the recommendation is as presented there. Can we just bring that recommendation up, please, Lynelle? So officer's recommendation is as presented on screen there, which goes to accept and agree with the campaign pledge through membership of Every Age Counts Coalition. And then, as indicates there, we stand for a world without ageism, and the continuation of that as presented. So I'll now seek a mover for the recommendation as presented. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Second is Councillor Potter. Do we have speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr CEO. Adoption of the Code of Conduct for Councils in Queensland is item 9.3 at 63, and the recommendation is that the Code of Conduct for Councils in Queensland be adopted as presented, and the South Bennett Regional Council Councillor Code of Conduct Statutory 001 be repealed. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Councillor Henschen, seconds. Speakers for or against? If not, Mr CEO, I might just get you to clarify that we have the Code of Conduct for Councils of Queensland now embedded in the policy. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. The Code of Conduct for Councillors Queensland is statutory through the state government. What we're doing is replacing our call it voluntary policy with the mandated state policy. So we're folding in fully under the state. We have, as a council, no ability to change the Queensland Code. So we're just by resolution endorsing it and putting it into our framework.
Yes, thank you, Mr. CEO. Further questions? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.4, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Corporate Risk Management Policy, Statutory 2020 at 75. The recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council Corporate Risk Management Policy, Statutory 020 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froloff, second to Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.5, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Complaint Management Policy, Statutory 040 at 82. And the recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council Complaint Management Policy, Statutory 040 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second to Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.6, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council dealing with a complaint involving the CEO policy, Statutory 054 at 88. And the recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council dealing with a complaint involving the Chief Executive Officer policy, Statutory 054, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Second to Councillor Henschen. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.7, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council local lawmaking process policy, Statutory 056 at 92. And the recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council local lawmaking process policy, Statutory 056, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henschen, second to Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And I will, just for the benefit of the media in the gallery, inform you that each of these policies has been through Council's standing committee and have had reports provided, have been dealt with and considered through that standing committee process. That's why there isn't the debate, as you would previously have seen, on these matters. 9.8, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Administration Waste Reduction Policy, Strategic 025 at 99. And the recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council Administration Waste Reduction Policy, Strategic 025, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froloff, second to Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.9, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council demolish, remove or relocate buildings policy, Strategic 024 at 103. Recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council demolish, remove or relocate buildings policy, Strategic 024, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, second to Councillor Potter. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.10, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council remote piloted aircraft drone policy, Statutory 055 at 108. Recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council remote piloted aircraft drone policy, Statutory 055, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Yep. Councillor Henschen, thank you. Second to Councillor Froloff. Speakers, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.11 is the monthly financial report at 111, the recommendation is there that the monthly financial report, including capital works, as of 31 August 2021, be received and noted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Second to Councillor Henschen. Speakers for or against? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly a great report. I just had a couple of questions I wanted to ask. The first question was just, I wanted to understand the process for the first quarter review, how and when that would be done. Also, I'd like to propose or understand, when do we actually start our monthly budget workshops again, working on certainly next year's budget? And I think that's really important, because certainly I think we've had great success in challenging our operations and looking for efficiencies. And I just think keeping a finger on the pulse and having those continuous conversations while the work is underway is really important. And I also had some questions about the capital expenditure. But if you'd like to answer those first ones, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for those questions. Yes, the quarterly review this year will be done in consultation with the councillors. One of my staff has been going from manager to manager and going through all their budgets, so we have everything identified with the expenditure with a view to coming to council, and council's flagged a few issues where they would like this included now in the first quarter review. So we thought it would be more efficient and effective for the councillors to see exactly the impact of the requests that you're asking for inclusion in the budget. So that will be done. Look, I'm thinking we have the auditors on site at the moment. That's why it's been a little bit later, but it will be done.
Yeah,
before.
one of the conversations that we need to have is pick a date for a workshop.
Yes.
And so we've just gone through stuff and looking at potential dates that we can get you to get into the general manager support. So staff have been going around all the managers. That's all been collated. Now we'll come back and do a workshop. So yeah, we've just literally now to the next stage is picking a date between now. We would like to bring it to the October General.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's fine. And then with the workshops, that again, Councillor, we have listed out the workshops there for our budgets and identifying trigger points where we need decisions and that. It's now the CEO and the set will just now collate all of try and schedule all the workshops in now, as well as not only budget, but all of these other workshops that you have been requesting, compliance, corporate workshops, that will be in discussion at the set now to have that done. But that will be done sooner than later because, like you alluded to, we need to get in early and start the process now leading into the next budget. So, and we have had it has been impacted, as you sadly know, that my manager of finance has resigned and moving off to a career opportunity, and I wish her all the best. And I'd like to acknowledge Selena and her work over the past, and she'll be a great loss to this council. And I just appreciate all of the input she's had. Technically, she's an absolute genius in finance, so she'll be sadly missed. And I just thought I'd flag that as well for you. Sorry, so is that...
Yes, thank you, and certainly acknowledge the work Selena has done. It was wonderful having her on the team for this past, certainly digging in on this last budget. She'd done an exceptional amount of work, many late nights and early mornings, and certainly she will be missed this year. So my other questions, just in relation to the capital budget. So I wanted to understand what controls are in place to manage the CapEx delivery. As I always notice in these reports, there are overs and unders with various projects, and I want to understand better, and I know it's part of the project management work that we're doing around how we estimate project costs and then report on the variances back to council. So I would like to see this council basically tracking what's delivered on budget, over budget and under budget, and so that we get out of this bucket mentality where we just shift from one budget to another, and we actually start really looking at each project individually on its merit and actually costing them up in a more accurate way. So I would like to understand what sort of controls are in place to manage the CapEx delivery in terms of the overs and unders that we consistently see through these monthly financial reports.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. I can answer that from the financial perspective. However, maybe one of the other general managers can answer that from a project planning or scoping perspective for you. As far as finances involvement, is that one of my accountants is our asset accountant, and she tracks all of the capital expenditure and revenue that's coming in into the council. The CEO has also an accountant there. He's just appointed to track the Works for Queensland expenditure and do the reporting through the portal in that area. So we do, the accountant there does meet with managers regularly and goes through their capital budget and highlights that the expenditure is in excess or under being spent. So that's the involvement that finance has from there. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. That's an excellent question, because also too, in the quite volatile of our environment we have now, even with the controls we have in place, tenders and pricing, and like broad spectrum statement here without any specific examples for today, but even getting contractors to submit, and then prices are fluctuating and it's all over. It really is, not just us, but also in private sector. Some of the other companies that we're dealing with, there's delaying. If you can get pipes, we know of, and I'm probably broadening out a bit, but we know of contractors and developments where civil works are being done. They're ordering the pipes on spec in case that's what they need, because that's what they can get at the moment. There's some of the subdivisions that are being done currently. They've redesigned some of their stormwater because the pipe they needed they can't get, so they've had to go to put in dual piping to carry the same capacity, because that's all you can get out of China at the moment. It's probably a way bigger conversation for today, and it certainly is an area that we do put our head to. The tracking of the other workshop that again went through the standing committee the other week is to talk about the org review and having there's probably a raft of these things that diaries are busy, but yeah, it's a couple of conversations that we really do need to have with you guys, as far as when I say your undivided attention is to. We can talk through the issues and would love to, but probably I would. General manager is each of the departments is controlling the works for Queensland. Just to clarify, in case someone took that the wrong way, we haven't put on a new accountant. I knew what you meant, but with coordinator Wilson's departure and the opportunity, we're having a look at the review of that. So we've got a staff member looking after W4Q for in her absence, and then it's a conversation on grants and grant reporting as well that will tighten up the controls on that. But we'll share that when we have the org review conversation. That'll be a conversation best left for there, if I may.
Yes, no, I absolutely agree. I just think these are big ticket items for council, and regardless of how busy councillors' calendars may be, we need to make space for these conversations sooner rather than later. So I am very keen to see some of these things locked into the calendar. I know we've got quite an ambitious CapEx program, and we've also got the Works for Queensland and LRCI works yet to be bedded down. However, I think it's really important noting the logistics around getting materials and services and contractors, that we have a firm finger on the pulse here. So I am very keen to see, I would like to see some sort of report, and certainly further to the conversations that we had, that actually tracks our CapEx, maybe a little bit differently to this sort of long list of projects, overs and unders, and actually really is specific, so council can see there are some key criteria there that we can easily see and check in on our CapEx program and its delivery. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, righto, so we have the report there, and we have a seconder and move, and a mover and a seconder. No. So let's go to the vote on this. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Council, I'd like to move a procedural motion that item now 10.3, Cumbia CBD Streetcape Project at 162, be moved up the agenda and attended to as the next item. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. So item 10.3, the recommendation is that the Cumbia CBD Streetscape Project be identified as a priority project within the 22-23 Capital Works Program for completion prior to Christmas 2022. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Henschen. Okay, speakers, Councillor Jones.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just after Councillor Shoemaker's conversation there and the comments from the CEO in regards to difficulty in getting all the materials and everything else across. Now, if you remember, I asked for an extra the $250,000 allocation to be increased to 300. I just want to put it out there that it may need to be more, simply because of the way that the difficulty in getting, firstly, contractors to supply the work and getting the materials to do the job. So I just want to make it, I'm fully supportive of this and always have been, along with Councillor Henschen. We've been out and done, as well as everyone's done, community consultation, and Cumbria deserves this. But I just want to make sure that, yes, we do, and it was always on our plans to have this completed by Christmas 22. But I also want the council to be aware that this may well need more than the extra 50,000 that I asked for at the last meeting to take it up to 300. So I just want to put it out there, simply because of the conversation that was just held around the last matter and the capital budgets and the costings and the availability of materials and all that. So how we handle that today, I don't know, Mr Mayor, but I just wanted to put it out there. Fully support this, fully support it, but I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. And I'll also make the Mergen QE2 Park, the 150,000, it may not be enough on what we're hearing and what we're seeing with the availability of contractors and all that sort of stuff. So with the Works for Queensland money and the LRCI funding, we've got a list as long as our arm, but we've already committed to some of these projects. So before we start getting ambitious and going and spending the money, we need to make sure that we have the capital to complete the jobs that we've already identified as important for our region, and we need to make sure that they're done properly. So we need to, I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and 300,000 seems a lot of money, but in the conversations I'm having with infrastructure and all that sort of stuff at the moment, and the availability of materials, all that, it is making it very difficult, and people are charging accordingly because I think the tradesmen are getting to know that there is a shortage, and people are having difficulty getting those people to supply the work. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. How we handle that today, Mr Mayor, I don't know. Whether we can do something in this, I don't know. With your resolution, I'm happy for conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I think we'll deal with the resolution as presented now that we've got it up for debate. So, Councillor Henschen, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm also welcome the ladies from the Cumbria community, Desi Crawford and Linda Thomas. Thank you. This has been a long time coming, and it's been talked about for a long time in the community of Cumbria, let me tell you. And I can rest assure you the ladies sitting in the gallery will confirm the figures that were bandied around for Cumbria some years ago are way below what we're talking today, and that's part of what is involved in trying to deliver these projects today. And Councillor Jones has alluded to, yes, the 300, I would support that, and more. We know only too well with commodities and contractors across the board in business houses, we're talking 18 and 20% increases in things. So when we attack this project, I think we want to be very mindful when we do it. We do this once and we do it properly. We're going out to community consultation in Cumbria in the very near future. We're doing up the drafts and there'll be notifications put out. We're going to do the Cumbria community consultation very, very soon. So that's pretty exciting, and I know you sound like a broken record as a local government official or a councillor, but this is a great thing for Cumbria, and about time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Fully support this proposal. Very excited about getting started, but fully note that there may be some changes in the actual budget allocations that need to be had. Fully expect that. However, I really do think Cumbria is such a beautiful town. It is a gateway to the South Burnett. It is at the foothills of the Bunny Mountains. It's a popular place for tourists and travellers to pass on through, and I think it is so important that it has some love given to the Cumbria Street. So I'm very much looking forward to this project, and as I've put forward in our LRCI and Works for Queensland project discussions, I'm also very keen to see Apex Park actually renewed and refurbished as part of the work that Council will do for Cumbria. It's such a beautiful place. Many people are moving to our region, and projects like this really do go to the livability and lifestyle of a town. How it looks and feels is really important to the way in which we live, and I just can't wait to get started. So I look forward to hopefully some sort of Christmas festival, celebration, carols, of some sort in Cumbia next year, 2022, to mark the occasion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, just agree with what Councillor Jones has said about the when you go out to consultation, sometimes things change, and the same with the QE2 park in Mergen. That's in its fledgling stages, so I'm keen to make sure that when we do the job, we do it as Councillor Henschen has often said, do it once and do it properly. But so just really keen to support the project, and I think it's fantastic that we're showing that we're absolutely regionally focused and not just centralised, and great to see Cumbia finally get a turn. I know you've been waiting for a very, very long time. So, yeah, big celebrations in next year in 22. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll just wrap up, and if Councillor Jones is happy, we'll go to the vote. So, yeah, absolutely, this is an important project for the community of Cumbia. It is well and truly long overdue, and so this council, to the people of Cumbia, will deliver your streetscape project as best we can by Christmas 22, all going to plan. And as Councillor Jones has said, it may cost more than we initially expected due to what's happened with the demand caused by COVID on services. But council is also very committed, this council, to community consultation. You've heard that from the council today, that we will be engaging in extensive consultation with the community to make sure that there is agreement between council and the community as to what will be delivered out there, and we'll obviously need to make sure we get our budgeting right, our scoping right in relation to that. So let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, I think it's time we broke for morning tea. It's now 10:47 a.m. and I'll move that the meeting is adjourned. For morning tea, we have a second. Thank you, Councillor Henschen. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll resume at 11:05 a.m. I'll now move that we reopen the meeting at 11:17 a.m. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff, those in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you all. We're now up to section 10, portfolio for roads and drainage. And Councillor Jones.
No, we've done that one.
Yeah, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you, I would like to move a procedural motion from the floor in regards to a meeting being organised with the DG of Main Roads, Mr Neil Scales, to invite him, that a meeting be organised with DG of Main Roads, Mr Neil Scales. Along with stakeholders in the South Burnett, regards getting heavy vehicles out of the CBD of Kingaroy. Looking at alternate routes to get into the towns and to businesses. Get into the towns and businesses. Should just be town? Yeah, get into towns. I guess it's basically in Kingaroy, this one. Town and businesses, get into Kingaroy, just put Kingaroy. And businesses. Also discussing options for road trains to come in to our region. So just like that's a rough idea. So this goes along with stakeholders in the South Burnett regarding getting heavy vehicles out of the Kingaroy CBD, looking at alternate routes to get into Kingaroy, and businesses also discussing options for road trains to come into our region. Yeah, I'm happy to be helped on that. That's basically what I'm looking to do in regards to that. So that would be, that a meeting be organised up here in the South Burnett, Linnell, if that's possible, rather than inviting him to the South Burnett. Yep.
Yep.
Happy to have anything changed on that, Mr Mayor, as long
Yes.
as it's along those guidelines. Thank you.
Linnell, Councillor Jones, I'd like to just add a second element to that if we can. So point 2 is that Councillor Jones, as the portfolio holder, be appointed by council to lead strategic planning and advocacy with the department in relation to the heavy vehicle movements, including road trains, across the region. So my intent there would be that Councillor Jones would take the lead on that in terms of the heavy vehicle issue with Kingaroy CBD, the road trains and any other heavy vehicle movements in or out of Kingaroy and across the region. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Jones? Yep. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillor Jones, did you want to speak further to the motion before we go to the vote? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just basically, I've mentioned it before to everybody, with the current works under Haley Street now, it's really brought the urgency to light a lot quicker than what we intended. We were always looking to gain access to Swickers and the likes of other businesses through the town, and I think it's very, very important, and I think it's a good opportunity now to strike and invite the DG up, and I've had a couple of conversations with him briefly, and he's pretty keen to come up. He said that he would look to try and visit our region and have a meeting face-to-face with council and our major stakeholders in heavy vehicle transport, and I know Protoco Oils and all that sort of stuff. We were out there a couple of months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, and just those guys alone to get road trains in closer would make a difference of about $200,000 to $300,000 in transport costs. So Neil, or DG Scales, was there at the time. We had a conversation around there, so this is just extended on from there, and very, very positive conversations I've had in the last month or so with him in regards to this, highlighting the issue, and he's pretty keen, by what I can gather in the conversations I've had with him, to come and try and help us out in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm keen to support this, and particularly also the road trains. I know we've lost businesses in Kingaroy because of the lack of ability to get road trains in and out of Kingaroy. So, yeah, I think that's a huge issue for us. So keen to see this happen. Thank you.
Councillor Henschen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, great initiative and incentive this. And I just would like to table and bring in front of the chambers and anybody in the public that's listening, and I've said this before, road trains put no more load rating on our roads because they're governed by rules and regulations and axle weights. So I think this would be a positive move for some of their businesses, the majority of our businesses, and as explained by Councillor Jones, the cost and the savings to be able to move freight in and out of the Burnett would be greatly appreciated if we could come to some sort of arrangement with road train access, not just to Kingaroy, but coming through from the feedlots in our northern areas and that. I think we've got to go with the times a bit here.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Fully supportive. I think it's really important that we work together through solving this problem, and certainly I think having the DG's interest is excellent, so we should absolutely move while we can. I do think it's really important that we work together on this issue and that we bring all stakeholders to the table. So I really look forward to the meeting and further discussions as to how we might be able to work together. I certainly recognise how important roads are from a regional development point of view, and certainly as one of the Kingaroy councillors, I know Councillor Potter can back me up. Many people in our community would love to see those those heavy vehicles diverted out of the CBD. I know that's our goal, our ultimate goal, and yeah, I'm sure by working together we can find a way to make that happen. So thank you, Councillor Jones, for bringing it to the table, fully supportive.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering whether it's feasible that we had, that Councillor Jones be able to use Rainmaker Consulting to help with this important issue, if need be?
Mr CEO, do we need to clarify that in the motion, if that's the appetite of council?
I don't need to, there's a further discussion in that space a bit later on, but I don't believe we need to clarify it in the resolution, because if that was the case, it would be that's a contractor that we would use, it would be matter of business. So happy either way at council's direction, but for my 20 cents, you don't need to have it embedded in the resolution.
Mr CEO, that being the case though, would it put, to protect Councillor Jones in terms of being able to deal directly with a contractor of council as a councillor, is that something council could appoint just to put some around that? I don't want to get him into a position where he's directing a contractor around work or anything like that.
Councillor Jones would be either working through the general manager or myself. So there would be an engagement through normal procurement processes, and that would afford protection to all parties. Yeah.
Yeah, you comfortable with that then, Councillor Jones? Certainly the intent is that Councillor Jones would do that work with whoever was working alongside council in relation to that strategic planning and advocacy. That was certainly my intent, was that would include any of that work as well, Councillor Potter, yeah, to clarify that for the meeting, yeah. Councillor Jones, to wrap up, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mr Mayor, and appreciate that, and I certainly wouldn't be dealing with any contractor or anything like that direct. I would certainly go through the CEO too, and that was the intent of my resolution here today, was to get a meeting be organised. So how we do that, I'll talk to the CEO and yourself, and we'll go from there. So following procedure. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.1, application for permanent road closure of a section of unnamed road, Steinhart's Road, Keysland, adjoining lot 321 at 156. And the recommendation there, of course, this has been through a standing committee meeting, and the recommendation is that council advise the applicant and Department of Natural Resources and Mines that, and I won't read all of this, but the intent is that A, it objects to the application for the permanent road closure of the section of unnamed road as stated. And reason for such is that the long-term usage of the sections of a road reserve is unknown. The closure may affect any future interconnection of roads and any necessary future infrastructure and any potential new development in the area. And the second element to that is that the option is available to the applicant to apply for a permit to occupy. And further, should the Department of of Natural Resources and Mines approve the proposed permanent road closure, that there be no cost to council associated with the road closure. Further to that, there's a delegation under section 257 of the Act to the CEO or their delegate to finalise any and all matters associated with the application, execute as road manager form Part C statement in relation to the application of the Land Act 1994 over state land for the proposed permanent road closure. So it is presented there on screen. Do we have a mover for the motion as presented? Councillor Potter, seconder Councillor Henschen, thank you. Speakers for or against? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to probably the CEO. Does the permit to occupy option go to the department or back to council? And if it goes to the department, could we offer a letter of support?
With my very limited knowledge, I would have thought it went to the department. So yeah, so the resolution itself, so if we're asked to advise, we would advise the department in any which case that this is the resolution, so we would get a full extract of the resolution which would indicate support. But yeah, I mean, certainly if the department or someone requested, as long as the letter of support was in not inconsistent with the resolution that's adopted, we could do that.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.2, Sherbert Road planned works at 160. Again, this was discussed at the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting, from which the committee has recommended that council proceed with reseal works on Sherbert Road between chainage 0 and 2.149 kilometres in accordance with the bitumen reseal program prior to Christmas. Submit a joint ATSI-TIDS application with Sherbert Aboriginal Council to rehabilitate and upgrade Sherbert Road to a 7-metre seal on 8-metre formation where required at chainage 0 to 1.812, and council engages with the Sherbert Aboriginal Shire Council in relation to a coordinated approach and joint advocacy. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder Councillor Jones. Thank you. Speakers for or against? Councillor Duff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just think it's be great for the Sherbert community, a real morale boost for them to get this road done by Christmas. I know that they're doing it tough at the moment, and yeah, that road, it's one of our highly trafficked roads in our region, and I just think it's fantastic that we can get this done before Christmas for the Sherbert community.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, do you want to add as the portfolio holder?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Councillor Duff's already addressed it. It's one way in, one way out to Sherbert, and we've been talking about this. It's been a significant issue for the Sherbert Aboriginal Shire Council, and I'm happy to be able to work in along with our acting GM, Jed, and our staff to facilitate this, and by hopefully all being equal and everything goes to plan, it'll be resealed and there'll be a happy community out there before Christmas. So yeah, happy to support this. This is long overdue.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.4, we've completed 10.3 previously, so we'll now move to 10.4, Mobile Black Spot Program, paid 163, and recommendation coming from the Exec Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting is that the following additional areas be investigated and submitted for funding to the Mobile Black Spot Program: A, Devereux Drive, Toorong; B, Old Esk Road, Toromeo; and C, Deep Creek Road, Inverlour. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder Councillor Henschen. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly I agree with the addition. I recognise how important mobile black spots are, well, how important telecommunications are in our region. I just wanted to ask the question. I certainly note in the previous conversations we'd had and the previous list of areas identified for future submissions that they certainly have either high proportions of population or economic benefits such as tourism or alike, or commercial entities operating in that area. So I just wanted to understand, how were these three roads identified when they didn't come up in the first discussion? And I guess in terms of how we actually prioritise these in terms of funding applications, what's the process? So they're my questions. Thank you.
Mayor Otto. I will do my best to answer that question. I believe these are additional ones that have been raised for our consideration. And it is my understanding that we also get requests in areas such as where emergency operations and other things are undertaken as well. I'm a little bit more familiar with the Toromeo area, and I do know there's very active Rural Fire Brigade operations in that area. Fire brigades these days do use multiple forms of communication, as well as the state supported radio comms. So on that basis, they're added. Your question in relation to prioritising that list would be a harder question for me, and I don't think I can. I'd have to take that on notice if you wish to respond on that. I do believe, though, when we submit them, the prioritisation is done on the basis of the funding. So I'm not aware that we actually requested to put those nominated black spot areas in priority order, but I would stand corrected on that, Councillor.
Just to add, sorry, Councillor, and then just to add to that, when the request came up from the staff, these were to be 3 additional added to the back end of that. Quite often, as far as my previous experience, the ones that were adopted previously still sit as the priority order of council. These all 3 will be investigated and got ready. So if there's a program that comes along that fits them in, very much with the general manager, very happy to take the priority, because we probably need to have a look at the next round of guidelines and see, and then bring that back into the future as to, do we have to 1, 2, 3, 4, just do we have a pipeline of projects? So I was very comfortable in putting them forward to council because the staff have identified them through the emergency management type process, and I suspect there's a couple of community requests in there to get ahead of power just to develop them up.
Yeah, no, thank you for that clarity. I certainly support the adding them into the list. I think we need to have a comprehensive list of where these mobile black spots exist and where we actually need to be applying for funding. However, I do think council needs to have further conversations about how we, looking at that upcoming funding round, I understand there's criteria for each round, and based on that criteria, we should be aiming our projects to get the best funding outcomes. So fully supportive of adding them to the list, but I guess what I'm saying to you is I would like more information, whether a report comes back about the next funding submissions and how we prioritise these projects or something like that. I would like to better understand this process through the infrastructure committee meeting, if that's possible. Thank you.
Okay, shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.5, 25-26 Regional Roads and Transport Group, funding nominations at 165. And following standing committee meeting, it's been recommended that council nominates Tingura-Chelmsford Road and Blackbutt Crow's Nest Road for the 2025-26 TIDS funding as part of council's future capital works program. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Second, Councillor Froloff. Speakers, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I think two very good nominations here, very well high traffic roads and contribute a fair bit to our economic benefits for our region. Tingura-Chelmsford takes traffic out towards Boondoomba Dam, Blackbutt Crow's Nest Road, high traffic for heavy vehicles with avocados and all that sort of stuff. So I think the council has done an exceptional job in choosing those two roads for nomination.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, there's no further speakers. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.6, NBN Regional Co-Investment Fund investigation and submission for funding at 171. And the recommendation there is that South Bennett Regional Council investigate suitability of the NBN Regional Co-Investment Fund, and if advantageous to council and the community, delegate the Chief Executive Officer to apply for funding to install fibre to the premises through the Kingaroy CBD, utilising conduiting installed in the Kingaroy Transformation Project. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. Speakers? Okay. Questions? Councillor Shoemaker? No? Happy to go? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. 11.1, formation of a South Bennett Regional Council Youth Council at 172. And the recommendation coming from the Standing Committee meeting is that South Bennett Regional Council support the establishment of a South Bennett Regional Council Youth Council, and that a terms of reference be developed and brought back to council for adoption. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Second to Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against? Councillor Potter? No? Right to go to the vote. Okay, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 12.1, LGAQ Natural Assets and NRM Advisory Group, 173. The committee has recommended that approval be granted for Councillor Henschen to submit an expression of interest for the LGAQ Natural Assets and NRM Advisory Group. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Second to Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Councillor Jones.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, just to say that Councillor Henschen's the perfect fit from our council to go and hopefully be successful with his nomination. I wish him well, and hopefully we get his representation on that board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Henschen. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 12.2, that's at 174. Requesting council review a minor local government boundary change between South Bennett and Gympie Regional Council. Recommendation coming from the committee is that council offer no objection to a minor local government boundary change between Gympie Regional Council and South Bennett Regional Council to transfer lot 66 on RP 825862 from South Bennett Regional Council to Gympie Regional Council. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Seconded, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.1, invitation to become part of the Darling Downs and South West Regional Waste Management Plan at 175. Committee has recommended that Council enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Darling Downs and South West Queensland Council of Mayors, subject to the Mayor Brett Otto having voting rights at the meetings regarding the development of a regional waste management infrastructure plan. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Henschen. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.2, Declared Water Supply and Sewerage Service Area Review 2021 at 176. Committee has recommended that Council adopt the amended Declared Water and Sewerage Service Boundary Extents for the provision of water supply and sewerage service within the declared service area. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froloff, seconded Councillor Jones. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.3, NWIDF Phase 2 Study Scope and Cost Estimate, and that is at 198. And the recommendation as presented there is that Council receives the report detailing the proposed plan and cost estimate. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Henschen. Speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was hoping that we would have a breakdown of the costings for the 5 projects, the Economic Roadmap, the Barlow Weir, the Baramble West project, Gordon Brook Dam and the Blackbutt Irrigators project. I just noticed that that's not included in the report. I was just wondering, I just question about where that's at. Thank you.
Mayor Otto, through you, Councillor Duff, we could go back and try and break that up, but a lot of the work that we will undertake, similar to earlier stages of the project, coordinate all aspects. So I don't think it's quite as simple when doing an economic roadmap for the region that we would break that work into components regionally. It's not, I suppose the catchment boundaries don't align with other subdivision of projects within it. It's a region-based economic study. So the 25-year roadmap, which is the overarching component of the work, sort of covers everything, covers all aspects. We have got those numerous projects which will have time-based allocations in the consultant's report, and we would be able to come back with indicative times, I'm sure, in relation to what's been allowed. More importantly, though, we believe that as the work progresses, we will identify more work to do. We're not of the opinion that we know all the tasks that we've got to do yet. And a great example is the additional Baramble West particular project, because it hasn't had the same level of work. I'm anticipating that as we go through that, there will be subsequent components of work that assist us. For example, once we identify hydrologically what potential there is in that particular project, then there would be demand management types assessments. So what I'm suggesting is, as the project goes, we had identified that we do quarterly reporting, and in that way, as the work progresses, we will be able to provide better updates on how each individual component, such as the Blackbutt Irrigators, fits into that overarching roadmap and the way forward.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. Just on that. So at the end goal, is it to have each of those projects individually shovel ready, like so that if there was an opportunity for funding, that we've got that, we've got all those business cases and plans in place? Is that the end goal?
No. In short, no. It would not be anywhere near possible on major projects such as a new weir to have it anywhere near shovel ready. I would use Barlil as a great example. Barlil is a project that's been extensively studied over many years. There's environmental studies, geotechnical studies, site studies, etc. So what we will achieve will be very different between the different projects. Some components, for example, relate to our own water security for urban water use, and we don't have per se a project to deliver in relationship to that. The scope of the project is more focused on advocacy and engagement with state government regulators and commercial negotiations in relationship to it. Barlil Weir, by contrast, is a heavy infrastructure project. It would be deemed to be very close to shovel ready at this point in time, and the scope of the project relates to demand identification and the willingness to pay. We would use that particular component of the scope to advocate the state government advance that project, because it is not a project we seek funding for. It's going to be a Sunwater project. So as best we can do is to advocate towards it. So our efforts on Barlil would be to advance knowledge in relationship to the demand for water, which would assist us in successfully advocating with the state government for its delivery. Similarly, with West Barambah, if a project was identified there as being feasible, we will significantly increase the knowledge about it to allow us to advocate to advance it. A project there we don't know the scale of, but we do know that Barlil, for example, was 20 million order of magnitude type project. Let's just say that West Barambah was 2 or 3 times bigger and was a larger amount than that. We would be looking at pretty significant studies to get to a shovel-ready state with that one. But what we would do is we would advance the knowledge about a potential project there to be able to advocate with the state government for them to further advance it, or indeed, if we had the wherewithal, for us to identify what tasks have to be undertaken to further carry that forward. It would be very easy to spend a couple of $1 million on a new weir site, easily, to undertake the ecological, environmental, geotechnical and all of the other studies that need to be done for a major facility. So what we're hoping to do is to, I suppose, open the door to that discussion, to open the door for further funding to be able to further advance some projects. But on those projects where we have the ability and we don't need infrastructure, Blackbutt Irrigators is one. We're not looking at new infrastructure there. It's a commercial negotiation. So what the overarching goal of this project is the economic welfare of the region. So we will do everything we can do in each of those components to advance that.
Yeah, thank you, GM. I am concerned that the report provided, and I say with full due respect, doesn't go to the intent of the motion, and I stand to be corrected, Council, that we resolve the report be brought back addressing the study scope, phase 2 project and detail on the anticipated costs. I know my certain, and I could be wrong, but my certain understanding of that resolution from the August 21 meeting was that we were going to look to identify the scope of the work to be undertaken on each of those projects, and that we would then be looking to provide some sort of an indication as to estimated costing around the scope for each of those shortlisted projects as such. Having resolved that at August, I have now commenced a process on behalf of Council of advocacy already with state and federal government in relation to each of those projects, pursuant to the August resolution of Council. And indeed, we've established meetings with the state and I'm in the process of establishing meetings with the federal government now that Council has determined that to be the short list. So I'm probably, and I guess that's also part of the what will need to be considered by Council as the pre-election advocacy, in light of the fact that we're probably going to have a federal election in April 22, and making sure that we are geared up to be able to advocate for key projects in relation to water. So perhaps, I'm not sure how this will place us in terms of timing for that. So perhaps in my mind there seems to be a little bit of a misunderstanding as to what the intent of the motion was, but I'll stand to be corrected by my colleagues. Yeah, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's good to have an update on the advocacy work that you're doing in that space. Certainly, I think the report here has highlighted the proposed project plan, and it has broken down each of those options that have come out of the options analysis. by their recommendation, and then indicated what will be delivered in each parcel of that work. So I'm probably a little confused. I was quite comfortable with the scope put forward to council. You know, for instance, recommendation 1B, Barlil demand assessment. Assessment will comply with the requirements of Building Queensland, Queensland Treasury business case framework so that the report can be used in future detailed business cases on Barlil Weird. The methodology includes, you know, evidence-based, rigorous evidence-based assessment of actual demand and future irrigation requirements, customer and potential customer engagement through public forums, one-on-one direct interviews with potential customers, designed to establish and test individual demand. The assessment considers the viability of demand based on the projected modelled income of potential customers, considering soil suitability, domestic market capacity for each crop and international export potential, and demand assessment report that will outline the process and the results. The report can be used to demonstrate the strong evidence base for the level of demand, capacity to pay, and the likely economic benefits. And you'll see that's just an example of one. There's recommendation 3, advocacy for state government review of unsupplemented water access rules, which talks about certainly making further recommendations and supporting information so that we can advocate to the state government. Recommendation 4 talks about the South Burnett's integrated water initiative, and yes, the economic roadmap is a piece of that work. 4B is the review of water saving initiatives, the Gordon Brook Dam assessment, targeted short form business case that assesses the viability of both urban and irrigation future uses of the dam and outlines economic benefits, including employment and economic growth for the entire region. And of course, 4D, the Blackbutt Irrigator assessment, and as moved in August general meeting, the hydrological assessment of a potential Baramba Creek weir site on the Barker-Baramba system, which will be a study to review the planning requirements, provisions, constraints and opportunities relating to the water supply requirements and water security options. Certainly, it's my view that with the $579,000 that we have, this is actually, we will get a substantial amount of work done, and of course inform further water conversations across these many different areas. I'm really comfortable with progressing this work, and I'm probably more worried about waiting any longer, to be honest. I think we need to get a move on. I'm comfortable. I think the report has highlighted council's intent, which is to progress each of these options. Certainly $579,000, Councillor Duff, with all respect. If we were to just focus on the Baramba, Barker-Baramba weir proposal, you could chew that up very quickly just with one study or assessment. So this will be one movement forward. When it comes to that project, there will be water rules and things that need to be considered. And our colleagues, our neighbouring region of Bundaberg will also need to be considered and the water plan will need to be considered. And these are all very technical conversations that need to be had to actually
Thank you, Councillor. I might just
get that
close
project
that.
shovel ready.
Yeah, thank you,
it's
Councillor.
important work.
Let's wrap that up there if we could. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm very happy with this. The only thing when reading through this is I see recommendation 1, recommendation 3, recommendation 4, but I can't find recommendation 2. Is there something missing out of the report, please?
Through you, Mayor, yes, it was a joint report for North and South Burnett. So there's quite a few recommendations not represented there because they relate to the North Burnett. Some of them relate specifically to South and some relate to both. So we've picked the ones that relate to both, plus the ones obviously specific for this region.
Thank you. Other councillors have questions before we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Let's now move on to 14.1 at 201, which is the Parks and Gardens Master Plan at Advisory Committee. And the committee have recommended, the Standing Committee has recommended, that in accordance with Section 264 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council establishes the South Burnett Botanical Advisory Committee. that nominations be called for membership to the South Bennett Botanical Advisory Committee, and that the draft South Bennett Botanical Advisory Committee terms of reference be reviewed and brought back to a future standing committee meeting. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, thank you. Second to Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Councillor Duff, go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Excuse me. Thank you all. 14.2, a day at the dam, 20 November 2021 at 204. The committee has recommended to Council that the South Bennett Regional Council support in principle and undertake further investigation into bringing touring and local artists to Bajelki Peterson Dam for a Day at the Dam music concert, and Council's Chief Executive Officer be given delegated authority to provide approval and finalise arrangements. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froelich, second to Councillor Potter. Thank you. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.3, pressure cleaning of CBD footpaths at 205. The standing committee has recommended to Council that a demonstration of a litter vac and pavement scrubber transported in a tandem trailer, and a demonstration of a council-operated spray trailer, and a demonstration of the street sweeper, be arranged for councillors and relevant parks and gardens and infrastructure staff to attend. That these demonstrations be arranged as soon as practicable, with a view of bringing a further report to the October Community Standing Committee meeting if possible, and that Councillor Jones and Councillor Duff be invited to sit on a working party to establish appropriate standards for CBD cleaning. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder, Councillor Jones. Thank you. Speakers, go to the vote. My apologies. Okay, go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.4, QE2 Park, Mergen.
I just want to move another motion on the back of what's just...
Okay, Councillor, so you need to put your light on stand and present your motion. Thank you.
Sorry. That the General Manager of Finance and Corporate Services undertake a review of the operational costs of the CBD footpath cleaning as presented by the Acting Manager of Parks and Gardens, and that a report be brought back to the October Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So we'll just get that up on screen so Council knows what we're looking at. It's just a typo in the word manager there too, Linnell. Okay, so we have there the motion that the General Manager of Finance and Corporate undertake a review of the operational costs of the CBD footpath cleaning as presented by the Acting Manager of Parks and Gardens, and the report be brought back to the October Standing Committee meeting. We'll seek a seconder, and then we might get you to speak to the intent of your motion, Councillor Duff. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jones, thank you. Councillor Duff, could you please speak to the intent of your motion? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to see the figures and costings checked to see that the way the hiring of the EcoVac, the scrubber and the trailer that was presented have been costed with each machine. It's on an hourly rate, including the trailer. And I just want to make sure it's consistent with how we cost out our plant normally. It seems to me to be a very high figure, and I would like to unpack why that is the case. 155,520 is the annual operating cost for those, for the EcoVac, the scrubber and the trailer. And I just would like to see that checked through that particular and brought back to the Standing Committee.
So Councillor, what your motion, the intent of your motion then, as I'm hearing you, is that the General Manager of Finance and Corporate work with her staff, her finance staff, to review those figures and report back to Council in relation to confirming or otherwise the ongoing costs of that service. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, Mr Mayor. I just would like a report brought back on that particular costing. Thank you.
Being the case, General Manager, keen to hear your thoughts as to the process of doing that with your finance team. Or Mr CEO? Mr CEO? Yep.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just like to make a comment, because it's probably going to be near on impossible for the finance team to do it, because this is going to be based on service level. So those costings had actual hours of utilisation of the machine in it. So if you use, so to establish a higher rate for a finance team, if you use a machine for 20 hours a week or 50 hours a week, will vary the cost. So there is a bit of a mixture in there of actually service levels, so utilisation rates and cost, but particularly for those the street cleaning machines. So yeah, certainly a utility, or if you or the other way you can do it, I suppose, is just calculate out over the whole cost of the machine for a 4 year, and it's just booked out on a monthly or sort of basis. But yeah, it is a bit of a so the figures that were presented from the acting manager were like a budget figure, I suppose, on a certain service level. But yeah, if you wanted to do a street clean once a month or once a week, we'll probably vary the cost to a certain extent. So yeah, so there is probably just some input as far as service level that would need to go into that.
Yeah, thank you. General Manager.
Thank you, sorry.
Sorry,
Mr.
so
CEO.
I was just going to say, so effectively you're looking for a bit of an audit and a quote in simple mark terms as to, can we just add, if you tag that to me, because General Manager O'May is correct, this will run across a couple of different departments, so drop General Manager Finance out and tag it to me, please. And I wouldn't mind if we just dropped out Acting Manager PNG, because it doesn't really matter who comes up with the numbers, it'll be whole of organisation, so we'll just, rather than identifying an individual in there, we'll just as presented, and the report be brought back, and we'll do an audit on those numbers. General Manager May is exactly right, so it may be, we'll do the best we can with what we've got given the time frame, but it may be also a bit of a model, as if you do this will happen, if you do that, that'll happen. So it'll be a bit of an audit on what was presented before and a model of what could be presented in the future, if that helps, Councillor.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. CEO. And I'm just looking at the report here that came back in terms of your RFI, I believe. I can see your point that the sweeper and the EcoVac are being charged out at $50 per hour each, the trailer at $12 per hour, and the ute at $15 per hour. So I can see why you're wanting to get some understanding of to how those figures are determined. I suppose what council will need to understand, Mr. CEO, is what will council be out of pocket for if we agree to buy those machines on an ongoing operational cost. So if this is what's going to be charged by the fleet back to Parks and Gardens, well, that's one thing, but then that's revenue going back to fleet. So is there profit in there? What's the actual out-of-pocket cost for council? I think that's, as a council, what we'd like to know very clearly before we go into making any decisions about buying any equipment moving forward. Is that clear, General Manager? Yeah, for you, Mr. CEO? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and happy to assist just with that. With our plant and fleet, there will take into consideration, obviously, flow costs. There's a whole parameter of things, costings that have to be included into all that as well. So happy to assist, Peter.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I'm thinking is we're actually talking about service delivery and our service standards. And from the RFI you've submitted, I can see we've sort of bedded down assumptions on what those standards might look like. And we probably need to come together as a council and actually, with all of the information we've been given, actually decide what kind of routine or schedule would actually make purchasing these machines worthwhile in the first instance, but also how that stacks up against our current service delivery and if there are additional costs. So happy to keep the conversation going. I know it's an important parcel of work. So yeah, look forward to further conversations.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? If not, okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.4 QE2 Park Mergen at 206, and the Standing Committee has recommended to Council that the design be prepared for QE2 Park Mergen and be circulated for community consultation and report back to Council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second Councillor Potter. Councillor Duff, you speak to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to ask if I could just add that we put a date when it comes back to the November Standing Committee. Can I just move an amendment?
Yeah, look, you certainly can. Would that be an amendment, Mrs. Yeo, or just a tweaking of the motion? Happy with the tweaking of the motion? Okay, so you'd like your motion to change to say report back to the November?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
General Manager O'May, which would be the appropriate standing committee for that to come back to? Is that a finance or is that a communities matter or infrastructure? Mr. CEO, what are your thoughts?
Probably the longer the better. So we could bring it back because I think it's going to be a team effort again because it'll be acting general managers, infrastructure that will maybe doing some of the design work. I could be wrong, but yeah. So probably if we bring it back, it was from the exec standing committee. Yes. So if we just bring it back to that one, that'd be muchly appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So Councillor Jones, if you could just communicate that to Linnell, November. Councillor Duff, sorry. I know Councillor Jones had spoken to this at the standing committee meeting, yeah. Okay, you comfortable with that?
Yes, very comfortable with it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter, are you comfortable with that change as the seconder? Thank you. So we've got consent from the mover and the seconder. Further speakers? Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, through you, I'd just like a bit of clarification on this one. The design be prepared for QE2 Park and be circulated for community consultation and report back to the November executive. So just a question to Councillor Duff, what are you hoping to have in that report brought back to the finance standing community?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Duff.
Thank you. I'm thinking that by that time we would have the design and we would have had some community consultation, but probably not. I think the design needs to come back to council before we actually go out to community consultation. So I'm thinking that should be just that a design be prepared and a report be brought back to the November Standing Committee. Sorry.
Okay, just interject there, Councillor. Yeah, our process, as a matter of course, is always that the staff would bring a draft design to council, and once that's adopted, it can then go to community consultation. Mr. CEO, that would be correct, wouldn't it? So there would, by process, under council's policy, that would come to council anyway, then go out once adopted as a draft, as we did with the Wando roundabout, yeah, and with KTP as well, with the shared zone, for example. Yeah, you comfortable with that? So no change there. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Jones, then, in terms of your question? No? No.
And take and be circulated for community consultation, because that's what it's stating, a design be prepared, community consultation, then a report brought back. So leave out those words. I'm happy with that there, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Duff?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so the draft design would be done, but it will be done in consultation with the community. No, they just do a draft design's just done without any consultation.
We've already got. Have you not got community consultation already? So that's the information that they'll use to design.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm happy with that.
General Manager O'May, in terms of process, would the staff would engage with the councillors as part of developing that draft design. Councillors could then get some community feedback themselves, could they not, as part of that process?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, that would be the process. We'd engage with the councillor and the initial community designs that have been developed, we would utilise those to base the design, which would come back to council on. So we just take that initial feedback that's already there.
So just confirming the advice there, Councillor Duff, would be that in preparing those draft designs, the design team would give councillors the opportunity to have input into that. And as a councillor, as elected representative, you would have the opportunity, therefore, to engage with your community, to be able to then bring those ideas forward to the draft, to the designers when they're doing the draft. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Yep, okay, so you're comfortable with the resolution as it stands there presented. Councillor Potter, seconder, let's confirm you're comfortable with that.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Potter, did you want to add anything to that? No? Other speakers before we go to the vote? Okay, let's go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.5, reduction of fees for the use of Town Hall reception room, commonly known as the supper room. The Standing Committee have recommended to Council that the fee for Category A Hall, Level 2, Kingaroy reception room be reduced from $28 to $25, including GST, for not-for-profit community organisations in the South Burnett. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Second to Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers for or against? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.6, lease, Cobbity Social Club Incorporated at 206. And the recommendation there is that, hang on, 208, is it? Sorry, I've got the wrong page, 208. The Standing Committee has recommended that Council enter into a trustee lease with the Cobbity Social Club Incorporated for Lot 2 on SP 254545. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henschen, thank you. Second to Councillor Potter. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.7, tender of licence area 21 at the Kingaroy Aerodrome, 209. Standing Committee has recommended to Council that area 21 of the Kingaroy Aerodrome be offered for licence by way of tender. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henschen, second to Councillor Potter. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.1, Cities Power Membership, page 211. And again, the Standing Committee has recommended that South Burnett Regional Council become a member of the Cities Power Partnership, which is a free program that gives local governments the tools, connections and momentum to capitalise on the global shift to a clean economy, and that a workshop be scheduled with Cities Power Partnership to support Council in identifying and adopting its 5 key action pledges. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Second to Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.2, Climate Resilience Leadership Course at 212. And the Standing Committee has again recommended to Council that Councillor Shoemaker be nominated to complete on behalf of Council the Climate Resilience Leadership Course provided by the Queensland Climate Resilient Councils Group, with Council meeting the normal cost of attendance. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Second to Councillor Froloff. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly looking forward to being a part of this course. I had wondered, since waste is in Councillor Froloff's portfolio, if she would like to join me in participating in the course. I think it would be very valuable to have the two of us involved in this, so just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Can I ask the question, Councillor Froloff, is that something you'd be interested in participating in? That being the case then, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter, are you happy to amend, slight change, Councillors Shoemaker and Froloff be nominated?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, but I'd also like to do the course as well.
Okay, so Councillors Shoemaker, Froloff and Councillor Potter? Okay, and Councillor Froloff, you're happy to continue to second that? Thank you, as changed.
Yes.
Okay, no further speakers. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. We'll take that as a yes from Councillor Henschen. I know from the Standing Committee that he was certainly in support of such, of the course being undertaken. So Councillor Henschen, it's returned. Let's redo the vote. Mr. CEO likes to cross the T's and dots the I's, which is a very good thing. Yes, so we've just returned Councillor Henschen to the meeting, and Councillor Henschen, Council recommendation is as presented that Councillors Shoemaker, Councillor Froloff and Councillor Potter be nominated to complete on behalf of Council the Climate Resilience Leadership Course provided by the Queensland Climate Resilient Councils Group, with Council meeting the normal cost of attendance. So we'll go back to the vote. Those in favour? Okay, carried unanimously. Thank you all. No, you're fine, Councillor Henschen. You've got to go when you've got to go. List of correspondence pending completion of assessment report at 214. And the recommendation is that the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report be received as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froloff, seconded Councillor Jones. Speakers, those in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you all. 17.2, Delegated Authority Reports, 216. Recommendation is that the Delegated Authority Report be received as attached. And do we have a mover for the recommendation that the report be received? Thank you, Councillor Froloff, and seconder is Councillor Duff. Thank you. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. There are no questions on notice, so I will now move to section 19, 276, where there is a recommendation that I will read, that Council considers the confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012, and the reports include 19.1, Rainmaker Strategic Services, under section 254J-G, 19.2, Great Lakes Agency for Peace and Development International, 254J-F, Wandai Swimming Pool, appointment of temporary pool manager under section 254J-G, tender for cattle facilities under section 254J-G, and Kingaroy Administration Office air conditioning upgrades under section 254J-G. Of course, all of those provisions are within the Local Government Regulation 2012. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Seconder, Councillor Potter. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Meeting now will close for committee. Thank you. Okay, welcome back to the ordinary meeting. 19.1, recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council resolves it is satisfied that it would be impractical and disadvantageous for Council to invite quotes or tenders due to the specialised and confidential nature of the services provided to Council by Rainmaker Strategic Planning for the 2021-22 financial year. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconder, Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.2, recommendation is that the report on the activities of Great Lake Agencies for Peace and Development International, GLAPDI Limited, be received for information. We have a mover, Councillor Jones, seconder, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.3, Officer's recommendation is that Josephine Sleeman be appointed as the temporary pool manager for Wandai Swimming Pool. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henschen, seconder, Councillor Froloff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.4, and it is recommended that Council negotiate with the preferred tenderer for the Wandai Dip facility in accordance with tender SBRC 20/21-22 and report back to Council. And Council delegates to the Chief Executive Officer the power to negotiate with any interested parties a lease for the use of the Proston and or Nanango facility and report back to Council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder, Councillor Froloff. Thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.5, the recommendation is that Council award tender SBRCQ-21/22-01 for the Kingaroy air conditioning and repainting of rear offices to Total Ventilation Hygiene as per the tender price. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Henschen. Seconder, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Now call the meeting to close at 1:21 p.m. Have an enjoyable rest of the day. Thank you.